And we are back for episode 12 of ClubCast, the official podcast of the Diamond Club. I'm Cody, that's Jake, and we are finally getting through October. Couple upsets over the division series. We'll get to my team in a little bit, but yeah, postseason baseball, you never know what to expect. And I think I learned that last year.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's definitely been interesting. There's a lot of hot takes going around the sports media, whether it's these playoff teams that 100 win teams that are getting eliminated early, or the playoff format, or the days off, a whole bunch of stuff. But at the end of the day, um, the hottest teams and the best teams, they move on. The teams that won it, and that's where we're at right now in both the American League and in the National League. So, but honestly, what is your takeaway just from the games that you watched this week?
Honestly, much like I expected, to be honest, we had a lot of fun in games. You know what I mean? Obviously, you had exciting games in Atlanta and Philly, but like in Baltimore and the Baltimore and Texas games, they were interesting. Obviously, a lot of things didn't go the way we thought were going to go, so it was a little bit unexpected. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, for me, it was stressful as hell. I'm sure for you, it was stressful in the beginning, and then kind of tailed off in the end. But yeah, man, I think we're in for a good take, man. We're in for a good championship series with honestly four really good teams, man.
Yeah. But yeah, just getting straight into it. Before we kind of go into the ALCS and then the NLCS, and then kind of going with our picks and who we would say is the MVP from whatever team we think is going to win. Let's just kind of recap the series that we watched, but talk about two teams that we'll talk about the teams that lost. Um, so just kicking off in the American League, we talked about we were really high on the Baltimore Orioles. I was pretty shocked that they didn't muster one win against the Texas Rangers. Kind of after being down 0-2, that's a big hole to come back from, especially with a young team. And that's where I think experience does matter in the postseason. Because one of the things that they were criticized for a lot is how are they going to play because of most of these guys are either 1 year or rookie players. And they kind of played like that, especially being down in an 0-2 hole because most of those games were pretty competitive,
Mhm.
except for that last game where the Rangers pretty much blew them out in Arlington. So, and then the Twins, they kind of gave the Astros a run for their money in the first three games of this series where it was pretty close. And then the Twins pulling away with one in Houston, where we did talk about how Houston hasn't played too well at home. They kind of shocked with a win there off of, I believe they beat Framber Valdez that game, who's been pretty inconsistent down the stretch this season. So that'll be something to watch for the American League Championship Series. But ultimately, both the Orioles and the Twins, both leaving packing. They are now eliminated from the playoffs. But it makes me beg the question because both teams are kind of in similar um, trajectories.
Mhm.
Both of them have pretty young rosters. I mean, with the Orioles, we've talked about it a bunch. Where not only is the core they have right now, the minor league system that they have is still ranked, I believe, 1 or 2 on MLB.com, and they have a lot of guys coming up. So, who do you think has the brighter future and the most to look forward to out of these two teams in the American League?
It's it's a tough question because obviously these are two of the best teams in the AL already. Um, I think obviously most people are leaning towards the Orioles just because of that young core, everything like that. But we did see their flaws. I mean, like you said, they played inexperienced. We said if they were going to lose, they were going to play inexperienced, and we saw that in the early games with like Gunnar Henderson getting thrown out in the ninth inning. We saw that in the later games, like you said, when you're down 2-0, and now what are we going to do? You kind of give up on yourself when you're a young kid like that. So I think obviously the Orioles have a ton of talent, but the Twins, man, the Twins are fun. The Twins are fun. They're good at Buxton. Now that they were out early, Buxton will get a chance to rehab quicker, so he'll be ready for next year. We saw the emergence of Royce Lewis again, and like you said, a young roster, good pitching, so a lot of energy. Honestly, two teams that you wouldn't have compared to start the season. but ended up in similar spots and with similar, futures ahead of them. So I think obviously the Orioles are probably the better team right now and going forward. But if the Twins can, add a couple pieces and develop that young talent, it would be rocking in Minnesota, man.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I think the obvious answer is definitely the Orioles,
Mhm.
and it's for a bunch of reasons. But the biggest one is just we've seen their prospects not every day to have one or two prospects turn out really good.
Mhm.
That's like a win.
Right.
The Orioles have almost like their entire roster of prospects that seemingly all put it together this year, and then you saw them win 100 games. Um, and they still have, like I mentioned, one of the top rated farm systems, and their number one overall prospect, Jackson Holiday, is still, I believe, a year away. He may debut next year, depending on how he does in the minor leagues. Um, my biggest fear for the Orioles, though, compared to the Twins, is because the American League East is a gauntlet.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to see the Yankees roll over every year. The Rays are going to continue to find ways to win. Um, I mean, they won like 99 games this year. They were just under the Orioles this year. The Red Sox, they are going in a different direction where they want to compete in their division and make the playoffs. And we're talking about a team that's won, I think, three or four World Series in the past 20 years. So they're definitely going to be in the mix as well. So that entire division, there's a reason why there really hasn't been a repeat division winner in that division. It's similar kind of to like in the NFL with the National League or the NFC
LCs.
East,
Hmm.
where it's kind of like a different champion every couple seasons. So the Twins, on the other hand, I mean, the AL Central is just all over the place, except for the Twins. And that's why I picked them to win the division in the beginning of the year. I was kind of high on them all year, not because they were blowing everybody away, but it was like, hey, this team could win 85 games and they're still going to win the division.
Right.
And I mean, the Guardians, they have a lot of question marks. The White Sox, they still are looking like they're going to go into a rebuild phase. The Royals, I mean, they have some prospects. Like, we love Bobby Witt Jr., but honestly, after that, their team's pretty ass.
Yeah.
Like, they haven't made any strides to getting better. They were one of the worst teams in baseball this year with the Oakland A's. So
Mhm.
um, I kind of think the Twins may make the playoffs more than the Orioles because, say the Orioles have a season where they slip up a little bit, they still win 92 games, but say the Rays or the Yankees win 95 and 100, and then they would be maybe with this new playoff format on the outside looking in, or be one of those playoff wildcard teams that ends up, we've seen shit happen where some of these teams just get
Yeah.
kicked out because you never know what to expect in the playoffs. So um, I think the Twins may have a better consistency with making the playoffs, winning their division year in and year out, because out of every team in that Central Division, they have the most complete roster. I do like the Twins starting pitching, but they do have a couple free agents this upcoming offseason. I believe Kenta Maeda is a free agent. I believe Sonny Gray's a free agent. And that's kind of their bread and butter is pitching. So as long as they maintain that, they'll be in good hands.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it like that because, like you said, it's really inconsistent in the AL Central. But also, it's kind of hurts the Twins in that fact because you don't see a lot of repeat division winners. I mean, one year the White Sox would be good, one year the Guardians would be good, one year the Twins would be good. I just feel like there's a lot of inconsistency out there until one of them really finds a developed and deeper roster. I think that's the biggest problem, and for most of those teams out there is obviously skill point for the lower ones, but depth for them. And I think the Twins are going to have that depth. They have that depth now. That's why they're winning just slightly more games, but they're going to have that depth going forward. And I think that helps them more than the inconsistency out there, really.
Yeah, I mean, and the Orioles, they had a really good season. They had a lot to build off going into 2024. And we've seen, I know the Astros are in the ALCS again, but, they weren't as dominant as years past. So there could be, it could be their time soon, but it just wasn't this year. And I think around baseball, I think most people kind of figured that because, they were like, all right, this team was really good all season, but we don't know what to expect in the
Right.
playoffs because of the core just being super young. And I think now that they have that experience, maybe they go into next year a lot hungrier. They come out of this a lot better, and they grew from it. So I definitely think the Orioles are poised to have another good season next year. They would probably be my early favorite to win the division again. But I think the biggest thing they really need, and it'll be something we can talk about in the winter, they definitely need frontline starters, because watching them pitching against that, yeah, I know it was the Texas Rangers who had a really good lineup. It was kind of hard to watch, especially in that last game where Kramer, he got bombs, So it was not good
You get
in
bombed.
that.
It's
It,
just
it, it
everywhere.
was not good. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola. That's all I'm gonna say, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So, I mean, it sucks for Orioles and Twins fans, but there's always next year. Just always tell yourself that.
Right.
Speaking of always next year, these two teams always have that to look forward to. And we're moving on to the National League, where we got arguably probably the two biggest upsets of this postseason. Um, and that was my Los Angeles Dodgers and then the Atlanta Braves,
Mhm.
both 2 years in a row, losing in the NLDS, both after winning 100 plus win games, having remarkable years, just falling short. Last year, the Phillies, deja vu again. They do it again this year. The Braves lose to the Philadelphia Phillies. Last year, I believe it was 4 games. This year it was 4 games as well. For the Dodgers, NL West opponent different. Last year was the Padres. This year was the D-backs. This year a little bit more embarrassing. They get swept.
Mhm.
Um, Looking at it from your perspective, especially with all the things that the Braves accomplished this season, who would you say is the bigger disappointment that got upset? Is it the Braves or is it the Dodgers?
It's really tough, man. It's really tough because it's two big disappointments, honestly. Your Dodgers always seems to get there, just can't make it happen. I mean, this is 2 years in a row. Like you said, this happened. But like you said, this historic Braves lineup is, and what all the things they did, probably have the MVP and Ronald Acuna, have a top three Cy Young candidate, and Spencer Strider too, probably, even though his ERA is close to 4, and Nick Castellanos is his daddy. But I think that honestly, it has to be the Dodgers, dude. Like it just has to be. I know you'll talk about it more, but just the continued getting right there and just not being able to get it over the finish line when you have the team to do it. I mean, last year they were in the Braves position where they have 111 wins, whatever it was, and they did the same thing. I think, like you said, the culture is kind of turning there to from winning to kind of that choking, falling apart kind of culture that the Phillies had the last 4 years when they fell apart in September. So I think that needs to stop as quick as possible. The Braves still have hope. You know what I mean? They just had one of the best seasons ever. Most of their teams locked up. They've had playoff success recently. I think while the Braves would really sucks to them because 2 years in a row, one of the best teams in the league lost to the division rivals in one of the most animosity filled series I've ever seen. But the Dodgers, I just feel like they're collapsing, and for a team that's been so good for so long, it's a real disappointment.
Yeah. Personally, as a fan of the Dodgers, it's kind of all the things that I've experienced the past 10 years.
Right.
I kind of feel mute from this, where it's kind of like I'm not mad, but I'm not like happy.
Right.
But going on to the Braves, I'm going to give them this season. I'm going to say that their upset was a little bit more disappointing because I look at their offense, statistically, probably like one of the best offenses in MLB history. And that's not me like gaslighting them. That's actually like them actually having one of the best offenses statistically, kind of near that murderer's row lineup of I believe, the 24 Yankees. That's what they were being compared to. So somewhere in the 20s or whatever. But I mean, the Braves kind of had everything working their way until it didn't. And they went up against probably their worst possible opponent to face in the Phillies. But it's not like they didn't get the starting pitching in multiple of these games to come out with a win. Their offense, that was statistically the best all season, ended up doing nothing all year. And it's not like the Dodgers, who, and I'll talk about them, but the Braves 1 through 9 all year, they were pretty much like guys that could all hit a homer, could all get on base, could all get like 80 RBIs. The top of the lineup with Acuna could steal bases. He was getting on base all year. They just didn't do that at all. And you have to give credit to the Phillies pitching. But it just also looks like they were just lost at the plate all series long, except for maybe that comeback win in game 2. But even then, that was kind of just like everything had to go their way for that to win. The Phillies had to put in a pitcher who I don't even think pitched the rest of the series.
Jeff Hoffman,
yeah, after that home run to Riley. So maybe it was just the Phillies, giving that putting the wrong guy in the wrong spot. So, but I'm just gonna say this season, but collectively, it is the Dodgers probably, and it's the Dodgers because I like that the team gets there every year, and from what our front office says is, all right, we don't know what's going to happen in the postseason. The best thing we can do is just get us in there. As long as we can get there, then maybe anything can happen. That's their philosophy. Love it or hate it. I mean, I agree with Kershaw's quote where he was like, I would rather fail at this level than not be here at all. I think there is some truth to that, but after some time, it kind of looks like a never-ending joke where they just kind of get embarrassed. And I don't say the Dodgers were as embarrassing this year. I think it's embarrassing to get swept to a team that only won 84 games. I just look at what the goals were probably for the Dodgers, where everyone thought they were going to win around like 90 games. They end up somehow winning 100. And I think that's in part due to Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman both having like career years. If that doesn't happen, or maybe one of them tones it down a little bit, they probably are more of a 90 win ball club. And I talked about it on a bunch of other live streams for the Blue Lows podcast. But I just think the lineup, they said last year it was too top heavy. I think this year was extremely top heavy. I thought it was a little well balanced towards the end, especially after the acquisitions that they made. But once you saw that Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman weren't doing what they did all season long, if they aren't going, the offense isn't going. Their lone home run was from JD Martinez. Usually teams that win in the postseason, they outslug you and they out homer you. And the Dodgers just didn't get it done. The Braves, who led the league in home runs, they didn't get it done. They only hit 3. The Phillies hit like 6 in one game. So that's why they're moving on. But, I'll say the Braves this year, but I think collectively over the past like 3 seasons, I'll say the Dodgers, because you look at the teams that they put together last year in 21, not to even get to the World Series is pretty bad. And Mookie Betts, I'll throw this stat line out for you. Since the 21 NLCS, he is 3 for 31. 3 for 31.
That's a 100 batting average.
And he had no hits this year. He had none. He was 0 for 11. And last year he had 1 base hit, and I believe it was in game 1 or 2. He's been pretty much silenced. I don't know what's the issue with that, because it seems like even in 2018 when they won the World Series with the Boston, he didn't really do much that year. I think the only year he's really put it together in the postseason was probably 2020, where he did it on and off defense and offense. But, to be that guy, you got to show up in the playoffs. And Freddie Freeman, he kind of had a weird postseason this year. He didn't really do much. He went 1 for 10, I believe. But he's been statistically one of the better hitters in the playoffs, whether it was for the Braves or especially in their playoff run in the World Series in 21. But a lot of question marks for both teams kind of going in here. I don't really know what you would do if you're either the Braves or the Dodgers after the seasons that you had. I don't really know how you could solve it.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think what you said was right. I think if you look at this year and you look at the Braves, that's why what I said was true. I don't think the Braves are it, while it's a bigger disappointment because of the success they had during the year, and you look at like microscopic details, yeah, that they definitely were a bigger disappointment. But the Dodgers losing again is more important to me, because it's like you said, it seems like it's an ongoing thing that's going and going. I don't know how you would stop it other than breaking it. Like you have to have the curse broken. One of these guys are gonna have to step up and have like a Mookie type postseason, because that's basically what I mean. Most teams do. You see it with Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper breaks the tension, and now the team's rolling. I think, or Nick Castellanos breaks the tension, and the team's rolling. It's a culture thing, like we've talked about off podcast, obviously, but it's a tough situation for both teams, honestly.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference between them and the teams that are left, minus the Astros, is that it's filled with guys that actually want it more than anybody.
Yeah,
I think I'm not going to call players out or anything, but I feel like some of them, since they're, like Mookie's already got 2 rings. Like Freddie's already got his ring. He's got his contract. He's just playing it out until, he's having career years like that. Like it's good. Like the post games for both of these teams, they were pissed off that they lost, and you look at like the Phillies, and that's what was pretty much brought up all on Dodgers Twitter. They were like, well, one, look at fucking Bryce Harper. That dude literally just like really wants to win a championship. Like he would kill his son to get like a championship probably. Um, and you can talk to Mookie after the game and everything. Like, of course he's going to be pissed off that he did bad, but like at the end of the day, like he's just going to look forward to next year. I really think both of these teams need to bring in somebody big in the offseason that's like hungry, that has that hunger to not only win, um, but ultimately win a championship. And I mean, the Dodgers have an opportunity to do one this offseason. I honestly think it's probably like morale of the fans. If I think ownership would probably step in after this.
yeah.
Um, and you never know, they may make a big splash, but it won't happen until it happens. But it's definitely going to be something the Shohei watch. Shohei watch.
It's gonna have to be a thing on the fucking channel now. The show I
Yeah.
watched for the Dodgers after they got swept out. Yeah, I like that, man. I make something move. I saw Braves Twitter talking a lot about Jock Peterson, how big he was in that clubhouse. I love Jock. I know you love Jock, so I don't know how big of a fit that would be, but yeah, that's what's gotta happen, man.
Yeah. Well, either way, both teams in consecutive years are losing in the division series to a division rival. And that brings us to the championship series. So we'll talk about the American League first, and then we'll move on to the National League. But yeah, so 7th year in a row, the ALCS involves the Houston Astros, and it's a battle in the Wild Wild West. And the Rangers are in the ALCS, I think, for the first time since when they went to the World Series in 2000. What was it, 11? Or yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Rangers, they've made moves this entire season. Some things didn't go their way. It started out with DeGrom. It started out with their bullpen. Then they get Scherzer. Then he gets hurt, who is more than likely actually coming back for this series. So that's going to
Who
be
would have thought?
interesting. But at the same time, the American League, kind of even not even just the American League, the MLB kind of rolls through Houston, and Dodger fans don't want to hear it. I brought it up on Twitter to a bunch of guys, but the Astros are the best team in the MLB, and they may have only won 90 games this year, but they had a lot of shit go wrong for them for this entire season. But the fact that you make the league championship series 7 seasons in a row, and you've been to 4 World Series, you've won 2 of them. They're getting pretty close to a dynasty, not only during the regular season, unlike the Braves and the Dodgers, but they're actually showing up when it matters in October. And then they host the Rangers, who they also have a lot of guys that can step up. The biggest in my mind is just Corey Seager, who has been the catalyst for that offense. He has been going off for the Rangers this year. He's getting on base. He had a 5-walk
Yeah,
performance. That's never happened before. Because why would you want to pitch to him? He could beat you. He's going on a similar run to 2020, which has been pretty remarkable. So now we got 2 juggernauts in Texas going after each other. I'm interested to see, what do you think is going to be the big storylines of this series, and then we'll talk about who we think is going to win at the end.
I really like it, man. I think obviously the interstate rivalry is going to be awesome. Like you said, man, I know why we both respect the Astros for the same reason. Like you can't not bet on the Astros. The only reason you wouldn't bet on them is it because the odds would be so low. Like you said, 7 straight years in the NLC or the ALCS. It's just incredible. The Rangers are fun though, man. They match up well against them. Uh, Good pitching from the Astros. They've been shaky as of late, but a lot of swingers out in I was going to say Texas, but I can't say that now. A lot of swingers for the Rangers that can really hit the ball, man. They've been rolling. Um, when to Baltimore did something that I definitely didn't think. You didn't think either, but two really good teams, man. Like you said, the Astros had a lot of things go wrong. Didn't have Verlander at the beginning of the year. Made some moves, got better. You can't count them out ever, ever. So obviously we're gonna talk later about what we're thinking, but I like seeing the Rangers back, man. The Rangers are a fun organization. Max Scherzer coming back, never didn't think that was gonna happen. I think we literally said when we were talking about that wasn't gonna happen, but here we are. Don't know how big he'll be because he has that dead arm, but yeah, ALCS. I'm not taking either of these teams for granted.
Yeah. I definitely think what this series is ultimately going to come down to is because I think both offenses are good, but I think it's going to come down to pitching. Um, and I don't know, because like I like the idea of Scherzer coming back, but then also on the other hand, what makes me not so confident is because maybe he rushes himself back. Like he is
Right.
older, like he can't, like he may say he's ready to pitch, and I don't know. What's better for him? Him starting out like doing like 1 or 2 innings, then handing it off to the bullpen. Does that sound like a good idea? Because I know in the Orioles series they got really close to blowing a couple of those games with big leads. Because the Orioles almost came back, I believe, in Game 2, and I think they kind of made an attempt in wasn't it Game 3? Maybe they made a little bit at
Yeah.
the end. Yeah. So if I'm a Rangers fan, I'm still have the bullpen in the back of my head. And the Astros, their starting pitching has been pretty inconsistent all year, but they've been pretty consistent this postseason in the ALDS. Besides Valdez's bad start against the Twins, they pretty much shut them down in games 1 and 3 and 4.
Right.
So I don't know. It's going to be probably you're going to be looking at a couple players, but one guy that's definitely going to be involved somehow, some way, because you
What's that?
got to pitch to him is Jordan Alvarez, man. Like I don't
He's
know, postseason hero. He is literally Babe Ruth in the postseason. He's just arguably the best pure hitter in the sport. Um, it's just he is a DH, so like yeah, that's his like thing, but yeah, it's hard to get him out, but if they can neutralize him some way, maybe not even pitch to him at all. Maybe they can come out of this series, but it's definitely going to be a big test with both of these offenses and their pitching staff. But I just think give credit to the Astros since they've been there, done that, and then the Rangers. They have a couple players on these teams like I already mentioned, Corey Seager. He's been there, done that too. They showed them celebrating like the wild card round in the division series. Dude look mute. He was like, because he knows the ultimate goal. Like the Rangers, when they went to the offseason this year, their goal was not to just win the division, which they ultimately didn't do, but their goal was to at least get to the playoffs and win the World Series. And they're in a really good shot to do that now. So it's definitely going to be a good championship series, especially just because they're division rivals. And there's a lot of storylines in this. The Astros dominated the Rangers pretty much all year, whether it was in Houston or in Arlington. They've kind of had their numbers. So maybe I've seen it, 2 years in a row. It doesn't matter how you do well in the regular season. Postseason's different. So maybe the Rangers have a chip on their shoulder.
I hope so, man. I hope the Rangers come up, put out a fight. Uh, I like the Max Scherzer thing always scares me because we saw last year with Strider. I mean, guys want to come back so bad to be in that competitive nature, especially a guy like Max Scherzer, one of the most competitive guys that ever played the sport. But you don't know, like, is he ready? Is he saying he's ready? I, it's gonna be fun, man. Honestly, neither of these teams should be taken lightly. The Rangers lineup has really been clicking. Obviously, like you said, playoff Corey Seager's a dog, but we're gonna see what happens, man. Go. I don't even know who to cheer for. I don't want to cheer for either of them.
Alrighty. Well, now we're getting to your Philadelphia Phillies. 2 years in a row, they've made it to the league championship series. They are the defending National League champions. So, but they go against a Diamondbacks team that's been extremely hot as of late. They didn't really coast into the regular. They didn't really coast into the postseason pretty hot. They lost, I believe, 3 or 4 to the Astros. But they took care of the Brewers. They took care of the Dodgers. They've mentioned that they've been playing with a chip on their shoulder, how they've been overlooked by pretty much everybody. And, I get it. I mean, it's hard to not overlook them because they are an 84 win team. But yeah, they've been playing really good baseball. And me and you both said it. I said it to Dodger fans in the beginning of the year, the D-backs scared me more than the Padres. They scared me more than the Giants. And it's just due to the way they play. And I ended up beating the Dodgers. We'll see how it goes against the Phillies. But I'm interested to see kind of your takes on kind of having a surprising matchup 2 years in a row, because I don't think you thought you were going to be playing the Padres last year. I definitely don't think you thought you were going to be playing the Diamondbacks this year. So I'm kind of interested to see what you're looking forward to in this series.
Honestly, obviously most people would be happy playing, a team like the Diamondbacks instead of the Dodgers, especially after playing that Braves team. But man, it scares the shit out of me. You know how it is, dude. You had those teams that just get in, get a little hot, and now they have nothing to lose. They're gonna do whatever they can to win. I mean, the Diamondbacks team, probably more than an 84 win team in theory, played really well. I mean, we watched them in person a few times. They played us well. I think we got the better of the season series, but the Phillies, man, they lined everything. They did exactly what they needed to do. They won 4 games. They won in 4 games. Their pitching is lined up. Their bullpen is ready to go. Their lineup is rolling, for what I would say. Facing one of the best pitchers in the league and scoring and hitting 3 home runs and winning 3 out of 4 games. Uh, both teams are at full strength. I mean, pitching is lined up. It's going to be real interesting to see how the Diamondbacks come out quick in Philly. Obviously, we have the first 2 games, which we don't play well in game twos. I always say that, but game 2's at home this time. So, and I'll be there. So that's really not good. But yeah, man, it's going to be fun. Obviously preferred over the Dodgers. Obviously feel confident. But you never know. When you get in the playoffs, anything can happen, man.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this series and I kind of see flashes of last year's Phillies team on this D-backs team. They're kind of going with their 1-2 punch, piecing it together in the third game, and then kind of resetting with the off days. With the NLCS, now it's a little bit different. It's going to be a little more challenging for them because they really only have 3 starters, and it's really Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen, and Brandon Pfaff, whatever the hell you want to call it, and then pretty much just bullpen game. And with the 3 games in a row, well, granted, they will be at home for the D-backs. That's kind of a war of attrition with that pitching staff. They've already used their bullpen quite often this postseason, whether it was in the wild card round. I mean, in game 3, they used it pretty heavily against the Dodgers. They pretty much used that as a bullpen game, but now they have all these off days, give these guys some rest. But they really have that Phillies game plan, which is like kind of small ball, beat you with the long ball in certain spots. They're one of those offenses that I mentioned in last week or the last episode where they're just one of those offenses that just annoys you. They get on base and they steal, they bunt for hits. They aren't going to beat you with the long ball, but they can. They most certainly can, because I saw it in this most recent division series. They got a lot of guys that have some pop in that lineup. I don't think they are a team that you can definitely just have an afterthought on. I definitely think the Phillies are going to have to still bring their A game. I think it's an advantage Phillies that this series starts off at home for the first 2 games, because that stadium, the D-backs, they've been trying everything in their practices. They had a videotape of crowd noise. They had it amped up, but you can do all of that all you want until you're there and you see all the fans actually there and they're chanting whatever the fuck they want to chant at you. It's different. So it'll be interesting, but I like the Phillies, dude. Whether it's offense
That
or pitching, even the bullpen, which has been shaky for the Phillies in the past 5 years, you would say. Even this year, it wasn't really consistent. But we mentioned all you have to do is put it together at the right time. But Phillies are scary, and I even mentioned on Dodgers beat, I said, even if the Dodgers moved on, I said with the way our pitching was, I was like, I didn't really see them getting further than the division series, and it kind of ended up eating the Braves too. It's just that if you don't have starting pitching, you're not going to get far, and starting pitching and pitching in general is the biggest factor in a 7-game series, especially if it goes all 7. Um, but yeah, I definitely think both of these teams are rightfully deserved to be there. They've played the hardest all October. It's definitely going to be a good series. Some new life with the Diamondbacks in there, but I just think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to pitching.
Yeah, it's gonna be real fun, man. Like you said, it's a lot of teams that want to play. That's what it is. The Astros, Rangers, Phillies, Diamondbacks. These are teams that all want to be there, man. Um, Phillies pitching is shoving. So if they can stick with that, you can't be much better. We have Wheeler, Nola, Ranger, and then either probably Taiwan Walker or Chris Sanchez, and then it runs back. So I mean, if you can't win with that against the 84 win Diamondbacks team, I'm going to be in the same headspace as you, I think. So I mean, let's go. Let's go, Phils. I'll be there Tuesday, so let's go.
Yeah. All right. So pretty much closing out this, we'll just make our picks and kind of see who we think is going to be the award winners in this series. We'll kick it off with going back to the American League, Astros, Rangers. I'll go with kind of maybe the hot hand. I think it goes 7. I think the Rangers force 7 games, but I'm going to take the team that's pretty much been there, done that, like I already mentioned, year in and year out. I think they still do have the Rangers number. So I'm going to go Astros in 7 games. I do think Jordan gets tamed a little bit, but I think it has to be someone else that probably steps up. And I think it's the guy that's probably been their season MVP. I think Kyle Tucker has a big series. I think Jose Altuve also has a really big series as well. It'd be really funny if they walk off against Roldis Chapman again to get to the World Series. But yeah, I'll go Astros in 7 games, and I'll have Kyle Tucker winning the MVP.
I think I don't. I'll say what I prefer. I prefer to play the Rangers. I think that our pitching has been well, and we can hit their pitching better, in my opinion. But I think the Astros win too, like you said. I don't think it goes 7. I think they win. I think the Rangers lineup definitely clicks at least once, probably twice. I would probably say Astros in 6.
Yeah.
Um, Not far off. Like I said, I think the Rangers get a couple games. I just don't think you can't bet against the Astros, like you said. I just can't until they've actually shown some point of weakness. So Astros in 6, and I like what you said, even though I don't like him. I think Jose Altuve plays well against a guy in the division and in the playoffs, obviously. But honestly, I'd like to see Bregman do something because I like him a lot. But I'd probably say if I did pick Astros in 6, Altuve for the MVP.
All right, cool. And then going on the National League, I'm kind of interested what you think my pick's going to be because I'm pretty much kind of gave it away when we were talking about it. I think by and far the Phillies kind of came into this postseason with a goal. They look the most locked in. They look like they really want it right now. They remind me a lot of the 2015 Kansas City Royals. Kind of got there last year, got a taste of it, and then they came out the next season better. Everybody that they signed, everybody that they brought over has kind of been clicking all at the same time. They even got Craig Kimbrell to start pitching in high leverage situations. I'm going to go Phillies in 5 games. And I think the Phillies take care of business at home. I think their biggest question mark is that game 4. Depending on who they want to go with, they have like 3 options, like you already mentioned. They can go with Sanchez, they can go with Walker, they can go with Lorenzen. They could just do a bullpen game if they really wanted to. And I really think it really depends on what situation they're in. If the series is maybe tied or the D-backs are somehow up, you could see maybe some guys going short rest. I don't know, depending on how the off days set up. But I think the D-backs after I think unlike the Dodgers and the Braves, I think the Phillies are just way too locked in on offense for even the D-backs pitching to be locked in. And Merrill Kelly and Zach Allen are extremely good. They pitched they pitched well against the Dodgers, but I think the reason why they pitched well is because both of those games they got off to leads like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really hard as an offense to come back from that. Like when I was watching game one, as soon as Kershaw gave up 6 runs in the first and they gave up another three and it was 9-0, I was like, there's no way the offense can fucking come back from that.
Mm-hmm.
The Phillies are the opposite of that. The Phillies are the ones scoring like 3 or 4 runs off your best guy. I just think they put it together. I think it could be a sweep. I think it could be a clean sweep. I don't really I'm not trying to talk shit about the D-backs, but I don't have as much faith in the D-backs versus the Phillies because I just think the Phillies have everything clicking right now. They are so close to getting to where they wanted to be again this season. So I'll go just Phillies in 5, but I could really see them sweeping.
Who's your MVP?
I'm going to go Bryce Harper. That's obvious pick, but it's definitely got to be him. Collectively from the NLDS, if they could give away an NLDS MVP, he would have won it. I think everything he's been talking about, they talk to him about his post-game interviews where he's saying he loves this place. He pretty much embodies the city of Philadelphia more than any athlete. I would even argue that he may be like the best Philly athlete ever. And just kind of everything, he backs it up. He has done everything right. He has turned the ship around in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think this is the year that he can get his chance to get a ring, even though they were there last year. I just think how everything's planned out this year, they just look locked in. So I'll go Harper. If it's not Harper, give it to like Wheeler or something. Maybe he goes 2 games, goes 2-0 if it's a short series, but that's where I'll go.
I like it, obviously. It's like kind of what you said, man. I was literally thinking, like, trying to find a way this series goes to 6, but I just can't. Like, I just don't think that Wheeler or Nola lose at home in game 1 or 2. You go to Arizona, obviously, that swing game is really important. Being down 2-0 is bad. We have Ranger, who the Diamondbacks have some righty boppers, and I think they could maybe steal a game there. But then you have the Phillies losing 2 back-to-back against, like you said, a bullpen game, something like that. I just don't see it happening, and then you're back to Wheeler. So I would say Phillies in 5 if I had to guess. Just because it's really tough to sweep, man, especially in a 7-game series like that, like 4 straight games. But like you said, we're clicking on all cylinders. I think we can get to Gallen and Kelly. I'm not worried, and especially Brandon. We can get to them. It's about staying steady with the pitching staff, keeping the bullpen down. I mean, I don't even remember what it was. It was like 1.5 ERA for the starters and 1.75 for the bullpen. It was something incredible, man. It doesn't need to be that. I mean, you'd love it, but it needs to be good. We're gonna bop. We're gonna hit. So I think honestly, I was trying to, like I said, I was trying to find a way for it to go 6. I don't think it does. I think it goes 5. Bryce Harper's obviously the pick, but co-MVP, I think Trey Turner has a big series, man. He's been fucking red hot. 4 hits last night, whatever night it was, 2 nights ago. Homer. He wants it more than anybody. I saw it. I think it was. Oh, it was one of the Braves games. Maybe we were at home. It might have been the wild card, and he hit one to the warning track, but we were up like 7 runs. Yeah, it was the wild card. We were up 7 runs, and he hits one to the warning track that gets off the wall for a double, and he's fucking mad about it. Like, he wants it more than most people, man. Like you said with Seager and those kind of guys, they've been there before, man. They've done that. They're ready for it now, but they really want it in the future, man. They want that ring. Obviously Harper's going to be that guy forever. Like you said, we could have that discussion about best Philly athlete ever, but I think Trey Turner has a big series, man. And I think as long as his glove doesn't let us down, I think his bat is really going to help us here. And just with the emergence of playoff JT Realmuto and Nick Castellanos, who's basically taking the role of Rhys Hoskins. And Rhys Hoskins, potentially, who fucking knows at this point, man. This team's just so much fun. So Phillies in 5, and I'll say Bryce Harper too.
Yeah. Well, that about does it, you know? So we both have Phillies Astros rematch of last year's World Series. That I can't remember when there was the last time there was a rematch back-to-back years in any sport
Yeah.
I can think of, except for maybe the only
Basketball.
last, maybe basketball, where the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Warriors went like what, 4 straight years. Yeah, like I mentioned, I'll agree with you. It just seems like the Phillies have everything clicking, and that's nothing against the Diamondbacks. I just think they're a year too early, and I think they just caught the Dodgers at the right time. And we can talk about it another day. I'll probably write about it, but LA, they were just plagued with a lot of shit going on. So, but yeah, I definitely like the Phillies Astros idea of a World Series rematch. Maybe
It's
Philly
rerun.
gets their revenge. So, but yeah, that'll be nice. So
Scripts
we'll
rerun.
find out.
That's what it's
What's
gonna
up.
be. The script's rerunning, man. We saw it
Yeah.
with the division rivals being the Dodgers, Phillies being the Braves again in 4. It's the same thing. It's all gonna happen again, but different outcome.
Yeah. No, I was about to say, no, the Astros are winning again. So, yeah, well, yeah. So we'll be back right before the World Series happens with our picks for that. Maybe we're right. Maybe we're wrong. I don't know. I may have just cursed the Phillies because I gave them so much hype now. So don't listen to my picks. But yeah, that'll do it from ClubCast. Make sure to follow us at the Diamond Club Zero on Twitter, Instagram. Visit our website, subscribe to the channel, get these podcast episodes. We'll definitely have another episode for the World Series. And I'm pretty excited once we get the World Series done and we get to some off-season baseball talk. So, but go Phils, beat the Diamondbacks, beat the Diamondbacks.
Fuck the Diamondbacks.